Hello, welcome to the 75th episode of Unifying Force. I'm Kat, joined by Dave and Gio. How is everybody?
Hey, doing very well.
Good, thank you. How you doing?
Good. So we are here to talk about the launch of the new video game Star Wars Outlaws. No, none of us have it yet.
No, it's like, well, we were talking about number one is it's just dropped, and we were talking about in the pre-show, it's a weird timing for the drop. You guys know, if you watch the channel at all, that I'm a school teacher, so I am just back to work from my summer of time off that I could have lost myself in this game for days, hours, or weeks at a time. But back in the routine of the fall and back to school and stuff, it's an odd time for school aged, anywhere from elementary to college age people, and those of us who work in education. I'm not delving into an open world, stay up all night drinking Jolt Cola and eating Cheetos kind of game.
Yeah,
a little bit there.
In general, I don't get video games when they're first released. One, because they're too expensive right out of the gate.
That's the truth.
Secondly, there's a lot of glitches that you hear about right up front. Then there's DLCs, which will eventually become standard, and later, if you buy the game later on. Because the thing is, when you buy a physical game, you don't actually play the game on the disc. The disc is like a passcode to let you download it for free from the store. So really, there's no reason to have physical games anymore, which is kind of sad, because I like the old days where you could save your progress to your actual disc and not have to store it on the console or store it in the cloud or any of that stuff.
Right.
So the fact that a lot of games in the industry now, it's like, oh, you buy it, but only like half of it is available at launch. Or, oh, there's all these DLCs and seasons that are already coming. It's like, why didn't you just push it back a few months maybe?
See, that's the kind of thing that disturbs me about non-physical media in general. There was like a company that just kind of went out of business a little while ago that was movies. And, everybody had purchased all of their movies through this, and just, hi, we're out of business. See y'all. Oh, your movies? Gone.
Oh, like Google, was it Google? One of those or something. Yeah, I heard in those cases, they'll give you an opportunity to transfer to other things.
Yeah.
It's like, that's part of the issue. But the thing, well, what I do when I have digital games, I just download them to the hard drive that's on the console, so it's separate from the cloud. So if the software patch changes, I still have the actual game saved there, or get the external hard drive so that you can get paired for certain consoles to save your games. But yeah, that's a trend in general, moving all to this digital stuff I've never really cared for. That's why, like with PlayStation, I know PS5 is the last like hardware disc games consoles are going to be manufacturing. From now on, they're going to be digital consoles, which is kind of a weird name considering it's still a physical console. It's just digital only games unless you purchase an external disc drive, which means it's not going to be as good because it's not built in, which means it's probably not going to have your built-in 4K players and stuff or it won't be built in, but it probably won't have that either, which is what I like about my PS5. It's how I watch my 4K movies.
Yeah, that's a great option.
Yeah, those are great options. But to hear about a game that's like, oh, we want you to pay $70 upfront for just the game, or here's $110 for all the cosmetics, or $130 if you want it early in advance for all the same stuff. And by the way, there's a bunch of other DLCs and stuff that aren't going to be available for a few months. It's like, well, then why don't you just wait a few months? Buy it. There were reports of people who bought the game through early access, and they started playing partway through, and then they got a software patch from Ubisoft which says, the game developer Ubisoft which says you're going to have to start over if you don't, initiate this patch, or you're going to have to start over anyway, or you're going to hit game-breaking bugs. It's like, this should have been worked out long before the launch.
I don't even understand how you get a game-breaking bug in. It boggles the mind.
I'm wondering if they're being rushed on release dates, because I remember the same thing happened when Battlefront 2 came out. where you bought the game, but there was tons of stuff that you had to wait 3 or 4 months to actually get.
Yeah, so much of it was grayed out. You couldn't quite click it yet.
Yeah, you couldn't click anything. You couldn't really do anything.
The background.
And I don't know if that's because they're under pressure to meet these release dates and they don't want to compromise the quality. So it's like kind of like the new version of the empty box campaign of Star Wars Toys. It's like, here's your game, but you got to wait like another 6 months or whatever to actually get the whole thing, which is why I'm not going to pay full price for a game when it comes out. It's like, yeah, I want to support the games, but not if you keep doing this crap. And the other thing, we've heard that the sales for this one have been kind of sluggish. The stock has collapsed. It dropped 5%. And the projected sales by March 2025 are only 5.5 million individual units, which is not good. But I hope they don't take the wrong lesson from it, because open world games are fun. There are great reviews who say that it's really, if you're a Star Wars fan, you're going to love it. A lot of fan service, a lot of neat stuff to go and do. But I think it's just not as appealing for whatever reason to the general gamers, the more casual fans, because they say, yeah, there's some gameplay is very repetitive. Sort of like when I was playing the Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga, where there's 1,000,000,001 little side missions you could do, which are pretty much all the same. Like you can only transfer someone's cargo from one planet to another so many times before it's like, okay, this is getting. It's like, can you come up with something a bit more interesting? Because this is a classic story about somebody who goes to work on a criminal score for someone, and the job goes sideways, and you're broke and on the run from gangs. But it sounds kind of neat too. It's like, depending on which gang you choose to work with, you can't piss off the others, and it creates problems. Like, that sounds kind of fun.
Well, this is very much like you're playing and living the life of a Han Solo or a Hondo Ohnaka, who was announced as downloadable content, or Kira from Crimson Dawn. I think Crimson Dawn is actually even mentioned in this as some of the people that you can work with. So deep cut Star Wars stuff, right?
Yeah. I think there's a lot more depth to this game than maybe has been advertised, because I was just reading some of the interviews with some of the developers leading into like the I guess the pre-launch, when it was being available to pre-order a couple of months ago, and there are some hardcore Star Wars fans there, people who love the EU, who read a lot of novels, been into the Dark Horse comics collecting when they were younger. And they've tried to bring some of those things into the modern Star Wars overall story. And the fact that it's set in that kind of classic Empire era as well, I think shows that they're kind of harkening back to the original trilogy in not just the setting, but adding to it and trying to bring another kind of spin and sensibility to it, which is, I think, as you mentioned, with the Solo and Hondo kind of feel, having that kind of scrappy underdog smuggler idea, and kind of riding this fringe between good and bad, or being this kind of grayish area. I think it hits a lot of check marks for a lot of people, but I don't think it's been marketed maybe to suggest those things. Like some of the early promotional materials, the trailers, they gave a kind of inkling of where the story would be. And so you're this character Kay, and she's kind of like an up and comer. She has this cute accomplice Nix, and you can kind of interact with them and send them on kind of discrete side missions, distract guards, use your stealth and come up with creative ways around video game classic problems involving heists and breaking in and having stealth missions. But then coming into actually reading some of the reviews that are out there from relatively reliable online outlets and newspapers, it does seem like it's become a case of people are kind of saying it's a classic Ubisoft video game, and kind of like the feeling of an Assassin's Creed open world modern feel, which isn't very original anymore, because that's been kind of established for about 5 or 6 years now as the kind of default gameplay people expect from what's called an open world or kind of sandbox experience. But it's just dripping with Star Wars lore. And I think if you have the patience to go into it and invest some time, it feels like it's the kind of game that rewards you for putting in the time to, read those extra little pieces in your manual, in your journal, in your codex, the equivalent that every kind of video game of this style has. So I think there's a lot more below the surface. But it's just a shame it's had a kind of rough launch. And going into what we were saying in the pre-show, this does happen a lot, even with the most huge AAA titles. A lot of the time you think, what's the QA? Who's been quality assurance and checking this thing? Because as you're saying with the game-breaking bugs, nothing of this kind of budget should launch and have immediate technical issues. You'd hope it's something they iron out months ahead of time. But it does kind of go back to something I was going to say earlier, but I didn't want to interrupt Catherine on your points, in that it feels like the video game industry has a massive problem with the pressure they put on labor and their staff. And we hear these phrases like the big crunch that kind of the corporate people put on the actual workers. And you've seen that for years now with the MCU and a lot of heavily CG based filmmaking. People are kind of, it's like the C-suite of people and the corporate entities that are pressuring the artists and creatives to work to these insane deadlines and, you know, like way above and over their contracts and ruining their social lives for months just to hit the mark that somebody picked almost arbitrarily 2 or 3 years ago. And I think it doesn't get talked about as much with video games, but it's a huge issue. And that might be one reason why you get even these massive big budget games with a huge IP like Star Wars. Can you get any bigger for a video game? And it still has what seem like teething issues when you'd hope it would have evolved way beyond that. But yeah, loads of like other themes coming into this discussion of Star Wars Outlaws. But
tons of things. Like
there's a lot to talk about.
Well, we talked about some in the pre-show too. Here's a question: is like the single player standalone, and this is like, you know, standalone game, even though you need internet connection or whatever, you're largely playing, you gotta download and this and that. But is the single player game aspect hurting it? Does anybody want to play by themselves?
I always play video games by myself. I haven't done multiplayer since the Nintendo 64 GameCube days. And maybe the first Xbox for Halo, but yeah, I don't do online co-op or that kind of stuff.
But again, we may be the outliers here, Kat, is, you know, everybody who's the current video game market is, we were talking about in the pre-show again, is just Fortnite crazy, or has been Fortnite crazy forever. It started out with the people who are actually gaming it and playing it, some, you know, kind of high school and college age, and it's filtered down to the children I teach who, you know, in elementary school, this is a lot of their social life, is they're hanging out playing Fortnite with their headsets on, talking about to their buddies, and this is what's going on. Are those people who are playing Fortnite that much and that hardcore gonna sit down and play this game?
I've never played Fortnite. All the clips I've seen, I don't get the appeal. It's like, what is it exactly? I don't even know. It's like you walk around these weird Cubix worlds and with all sorts of different IP skins and things like that, and do whatever it is you do.
Well, that was the thing too. So I liken, and I'm old, okay. I liken Fortnite when I played it, when it early on, when it came out, not when it first came out, is kind of the modern version of Wolfenstein, okay, or Quake.
Yeah,
you know,
Unreal Tournament.
Or Doom.
Yeah, it's Quake, or that kind of thing. That you're coming around, you're finding a lot of people just finding your sniping spot, right? You know, you have those people who are just gonna hide in a spot, and you're gonna snipe everybody. Or you've got the ones that don't care about anything and are just going to run into a mass of other players and just open fire everywhere. But Fortnite adds the aspect of being able to build some of these elements of you know your hideout and your hide in your spot, and
it's got the tower defense structure, which they've kind of taken away and added back again a few times. And
it also has the aspect of, you know, a Quake tournament, when you're even doing teams, could last forever, because if somebody found a good sniping spot and a good hideout, they're just going to sit there and you're not going to find them until they, get you in their crosshairs. But Fortnite, the world is, correct me if I'm wrong, it's been a long time, they still do it this way, the world is shrinking. The time, you can't always just hang out on the periphery, because that periphery is going away. So it's a time crunch as well as what you have going with there. It's not, you're going to end this session of it and you're going to start a new one. You're going to end this session and you're going to start a new one. As the hiding and the flushing. It's the TikTok generation of video games, because all of our, myself included, attention spans are just going down.
Yeah, the attention span decreases with the younger you are, it seems. Yeah, the Fortnite model is actually kind of crazy, because it started out as what was just described as an online shooter, and then it used the battle royale format, which it wasn't original to Fortnite, but they're the people who platformed it on a global scale. And now I was actually just looking up Fortnite in the pre-show as well, just to see what the kind of first descriptions are on Google to someone who's not looked at Fortnite before, and maybe to remind myself as well. And it describes Fortnite as not only as an online battle royale shooter and video game that's free to play, but also a video game platform unto itself. And that's really a good way of describing how gigantic Fortnite has become since it launched in 2017. And they're definitely, at the top of the market and doing all the great kind of SEO things to really get engagement and maintain a huge user fan base, playing fan base, and just engaged people online. They do tend to segment a lot of the younger demographics, as you mentioned, but it's created such a social culture around gaming as well. The fact that you get people on their headsets, people talking in Discord servers just to arrange video game sessions, or whatever, messaging apps they use. Usually it's the typing on your phone to try and get somebody to coordinate when they put their headset and sign in the same time as you do. And, you're in the same server, you're in the lobby. You've still got that old format that some of us who've played online games from the kind of era, the pre-Fortnite era, which I feel like is going to be an acronym in history going forward.
Pre-Fortnite.
Yeah, pre and post Fortnite.
The PFE.
Yeah. And that structure of battle royale, the fact that you've got a gigantic map that's rendered and you launch into it, sometimes through a kind of crazy halo jump or parachute down descent, kind of control your landing, and then the map is ever shrinking. There's 100 of you, some of your buddies, and some random people potentially from around the world, depending on which server you're on. All of that kind of, it's constantly iterating a new live experience every time, and that's why these sort of structures of seeing video games as a live service have become the most profitable and gigantically revenue-giving ecosystems within video games. And actually, for all of media, the budget of the Hollywood film industry versus just the North American video game industry, it's like comparing, I don't know, it's like comparing a hamster to a blue whale. Even it's probably not even enough orders of magnitude to describe the difference in how big gaming is. So if Star Wars can harness a tiny wedge of that, it would be fantastic for Lucasfilm generally.
Well, yeah, and it has somewhat, and that was what we were talking about before as well, is there are Star Wars skins that are relatively popular in Fortnite. There are even websites that I've looked up over here that it ranks the popularity of the Star Wars skins just for season 4, for all time. And so are you going to get, maybe you are, maybe you aren't, get Fortnite gamers to be interested in a Star Wars game when they can just play Fortnite in a Star Wars skin? Or the converse of that is, oh, I've played my Star Wars skin in Fortnite as I like playing Star Wars games. Oh, I'll check out this game. But
the cosmetics, they make almost all of their profit off their engagement and their users on the cosmetics, on the skins, on the aesthetics that kind of feel weird. And I think there's a constant back and forth amongst gamers nowadays on the ethics of cosmetics and skins. And also whether it's even
started on that, because I was talking about Quake, and we played online multiplayer Quake as we wired up our suite in college with actual Cat 5 wire.
So a LAN party.
Everybody, exactly, when we were playing Quake.
They're coming back, by the way. The people are organizing LAN parties again as a but yeah, sorry, go on.
Well, to keep yourself from the massive online things of just having people bomb you, and I can see setting up a LAN party for kids playing this to make it safer than like the online environment. I think that's great. But I mean, you're talking about the skins though. We put so much work into our Quake clan when we had to go and make our own skins. Right, our Quake's clan was like the Nacho clan or whatever, and we had giant sombreros that we had onto our skins and the different colors so you could tell who everybody was. And or then at some point we got tired of that and we engineered like Reservoir Dogs skins onto our Quake people. But you're not doing that anymore. You're paying for it, and that's the revenue stream.
Yeah, it's the microtransactions that every developer wants, and every publishing house in video games thinks that they have to include. And Star Wars has really suffered for this. It's a huge issue with mobile gaming, and it's always going to be something that a lot of mobile gamers, if you're on your phone and you want to have something that's cosmetically identifiable, you're going to have to pay for it, even if the game's free on your phone. But when it hit Star Wars' Battlefront 2 remake in 2017, with the kind of loot boxes and the way things were grayscaled and paywalled off, and the fact that you couldn't really play a lot of the game without putting this kind of Russian roulette gambling system into it to kind of pay to get currency in game, to randomly get objects, to randomly potentially give you something that you wanted, but not even guaranteed. There was a big kind of uprising against that, and a backlash, and that was actually well organized and a great outcome, because EA completely backtracked it and actually ended up essentially apologizing, and after a few months producing a much better and much more immersive video game experience, and didn't kind of paywall off a lot of content, even if it was just cosmetics in the skins that we keep talking about. And yeah, Star Wars Battlefront 2, I think, is one of the successes in gaming recently, at least of the current or last generation, because it was a massive game studio that kind of thought they could take all the gamers for a ride, and even the fans, maybe the casual gamers that were just Star Wars fans who jump on board just because it's Battlefront 2 and it looked awesome, or for the name recognition of Battlefront being a legendary video game series for LucasArts. And the company was kind of defeated in that. The gamers and the casuals rose up together. I'm sure there were crazy people online saying awful things, but let's ignore the minority because it's always there. But together, it was almost like solidarity between different types of fans who just wanted a massive corporation to say, hey, you can't just ride us into the ground so obviously and mercilessly. Give us a better experience. Give us 1/10 of what you've promised, and give us something that is worth returning to. And they turned Battlefront 2 into a really good, almost kind of live gaming service as well, in that they had season updates and patches that brought in characters from the Clone Wars and other eras of Star Wars, that brought in new maps, new weapons, new vehicles, and they supported it, I think, for a good 36 months at least after the initial launch, and even going into 2 or 3 years beyond that time frame, they were still producing content. I think the most recent thing was, I think they had an Anakin Obi-Wan Clone Wars outfit from the series itself that you could play as. So again, it comes back to a lot of this cosmetic stuff, and we keep saying skins. I hate the phrase, but
yeah,
it is something that a lot of people now are happy to pay for, and so it'll still be a huge element of gaming that the corporations will provide.
Well, I'm reading some reviews here that we're talking about, and that's some of the reviews that people don't necessarily like about this. I think it's the kind of thing that I like, is you are creating a new character, and I enjoy the fact that Star Wars gaming history has the history of, creating a now beloved Star Wars character in Cal Kestis that we've gotten, physical lightsabers and things for at the Disney parks. That's really becoming a part of the lore. I think this new character has the potential of that if this game goes well. But, here's people complaining, going, here's your first mistake when making an open world Star Wars game, not letting us create our own character, not letting you get into your own bit about that. What do you guys think about that? Is creating a new character that you can be in the story better, or letting you create your own and immerse yourself in there?
It would make sense to let them make your own character, because you can go in. You don't have to necessarily play the main campaign, kind of like Grand Theft Auto. It's like, there's a storyline there, but you don't have to go to the story points. You can just go off and do whatever you want. And that's kind of the appeal of open world games. So why not give an option to select a different, come up with whatever character you want and go from there. But even then, there's other things. Like, I remember Battlefront 2 had these really great seasons when they started. I'm like, why aren't these seasons just made as DLC so you could have them and replay them all the time? It's like, well, why is Ewok Hunt, which sounds awesome, just a brief 2-week thing? It's like, this shouldn't be just a 2-week event. This should be a mainstay on your game there.
Yeah. But they corrected that. To EA's credit, eventually they brought in all those things that were temporary and made them fixed and finalized, which is why I kept banging on about EA for a bit, because they're absolutely terrible in a lot of aspects, but it does seem like they listened to the Star Wars fans, so the Force was kind of with us for a little bit in 2018.
I still haven't been able to find Ewok Hunt. I don't know if they made that available or not after the 2-week thing, but it's like, that's another thing. It's like they make games and it seems like they're more excited about the upcoming seasons than the actual content in the game at launch. Another thing we were talking about that probably hurt this game's sales was the release date, August 30th, right when kids are going back to school. Some of them have already been back in school for 2.5 weeks already.
Yeah, completely.
It's like, what are you doing? It's like, with the open world, with how expansive it is, that's something you're going to sink a lot of time into, and you're not going to be doing that when you're just going back to school. You're going to be doing much shorter type stuff.
Yeah. Especially
with the heat waves we've been having this year in the summer, it'd be a perfect time for people who are playing games inside. Could have sold a lot more copies, or if not, if it was a situation where it wasn't going to be ready, then maybe push it back to December. Release it during the holidays and make a bunch of money there.
Mm-hmm.
Unless they didn't want it to compete with the next Assassin's Creed game, which is releasing November 15th, cashing in on the early Black Friday stuff. But so that kind of that type of stuff will hurt it, but I'm still going to get the game eventually and play it because I like open world. So that should be fun.
Well, I think that's a large part of the thing too, is a hurt is price point versus quality. Is, I think people would be a lot happier with this game if it were at a cheaper price point. I think a lot more people would be sampling it and trying it at a cheaper price point. We were talking about like the concept of Fortnite is, okay, here you can enter this game. It's like, well, it's really, it's a bad model. Is here's a little bit, here's a sample. you could have this and then come in. Oh, and now you got to buy this.
It's fishing. They're
Yeah.
just there with their rod.
I remember that after the Battlefront fiasco, one of the complaints they had was, the fans had was that there's no levels where you can fly spaceships or anything, which seems like a crazy oversight for Battlefront. But they responded by making Star Wars Squadrons, and that was a great game. And I believe it was only priced at like $40 instead of the standard 70, and that was good. And that sold a ton of copies and got really great reviews.
And this has your spaceship. This has your spaceship flying in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this has all that. So the price point is probably still fair, but again, I'm not excited when even during the pre-launch, they're like, "Oh, here's all these DLCs that have yet to arrive." It's like, well, then maybe we should just wait till they're available.
Yeah. Well, back to your point, Dave. I really like the question that you asked about: do we want the ability to create our own character in game? I would say for the most part, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But I was actually reading and I came across this phrase in video gaming recently that I hadn't heard of, called an interactive sim, which is meant to be a descriptive subgenre of massively open world games and RPG games, whereby your experience depends on your choices, not necessarily dialogue choices like in Knights of the Old Republic, but the way you go about solving problems. So for Star Wars Outlaws, it's the way you manage to get past a bunch of security guards to get into a vault, let's say. But these games allow you to have a sort of immersive experience that changes all the time based on the way you game, the mechanics that you use to go past an aspect of opposition from the CPU. But they already have an established character in world. And when I was reading that, it suddenly made sense to me because I thought immediately of Jedi Fallen Order, in that you already had this hardwired absolute character that you couldn't change anything from initially. Of course, you could change the lightsaber color and the hilt and so on, and eventually skins and costumes, but the core identity, name, appearance of this character was fixed, and it was fixed for the whole story. So we had Cal, here you have Kay, and I think also to your other question, I think Kay's character seems strong enough and individual enough to be a persistent, enduring character that probably will have, some accessories showing up in the Disney parks soon or available to buy from Shop Disney. Definitely her blaster and things like that. Definitely her critter nicks on the shoulder. That's a good design. That could sell like porgs. But I also think that there seems to be this idea that some open world RPGs have a fixed character, unlike, say, GTA or let's say Knights of the Old Republic or Mass Effect or some of these kind of more established immersive RPGs. And another example I'd say to go with that as well is the Witcher series. So The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt was one of the most lauded and highly rated games ever by gamers, by critics, by everyone. And Geralt's character was fixed from the beginning, but it's only your options and your choices within game that change, and then very much tailor the experience to you and how you play it. So it does seem like big developers don't always want to give you that entirely customizable experience. And I think that there are reasons for it. And some of the examples I've cited are examples of where it's been successful and accepted. But when I've played those games, I've always thought a couple of times, wouldn't it be cool if it looked like me or like how I wanted it to look rather than just the generic cookie cutter from the beginning?
Well, and here's a thing too, is this and was, previous Star Wars games with Cal Kestis, is it too specific to a market? This is a reasonably young woman in this, and while having other young women characters, that's good to bring the young women in, but is it too gender identity specific? Are little boy gamers going to want to play as this character? Are little girls going to want to play as Cal Kestis as much? think about some of the biggest and cross genderal, if that's a word, characters that you have. You can imagine yourself in them, and there were specific characters. You don't have to have it be customizable. But think about Master Chief. Master Chief in the beginning didn't have all the lore that he does now. It's gone further down. But you're wearing the helmet. You can picture yourself wearing the helmet, male, female, or otherwise. Like, my niece is a huge Halo fan. Like, I had to create a Master Chief cosplay for her, and it's that kind of thing. Though she's actually a really shy kind of gamer girl, but I took her to a Comic-Con in that cosplay. She puts on that helmet and she was freaking Master Chief. People are coming up to her wanting to pose with pictures, and it's not standing there like, I'll take my picture. No, she's like posing and pulling up the gun and doing and kicking it way back to the Nintendo Entertainment System, right? Is Metroid. Samus, female. In the helmet. Did anybody freaking know that when you started? No. Are we kicking ourselves in the butt about just having this specific of a character to start out with? If you'd put her in like the Rocketeer helmet, like, what is it, Sorry Bliss or whatever, like, from you know who I'm talking about, like, and would that make a difference?
Well, that one you could tell was a girl, but
well, yeah, I don't know.
really care less what the. But again, it's like you said, you could just make the character interchangeable, or just design your own character. So many games let you do that. Hell, even racing games like Formula One stuff lets you make your own characters and do that aren't even the real drivers. It's like you would think an open world game would do the same, and that you could just, since when it comes to cutscenes, it's easy that whatever name you pick is the name that I mean, the graphics are so good they wouldn't be able to lip sync for every individual name on the planet. Yeah. But unless they have the names already pre-selected, and then you can just design color, the actual look of the character as opposed to what they're called. But
like in Mass Effect and Dragon Age, that's the
that's
how they get around it.
Yeah, so that would be one way of doing it. But I haven't played the game, so I don't know how specific it is with the character. But then again, you have games like Alien Isolation, where you're like Ripley again, or Ripley's daughter, and everybody loved that. Nobody cared about it being too gender specific there. So
Well, I'm going to argue that that's a different thing. That Ripley's reputation in the movies has preceded her. This is a new character. If you were playing this as Padme Amidala, wouldn't matter.
Well, Ripley's daughter is not in the movies except for the extended.
Yeah, I know, but still, it's that kind of thing. Nope, that's Ripley. Is you a character that it's somebody that has an established presence, even though it's her daughter, even though it's a continuation, but someone with a brand new story. It's kind of like that. It took a while in Batu for Vi to pick up any sort of fandom. You create Batu and you create Galaxy's Edge and you create this new character to like roam around and like be the Resistance spy in there, as opposed to using someone from the established canon of movies or shows. And Vi has fans now. I've gone to the parks and seen people there dressed up as Vi. But when it started, people are like, who is this chick in the rebel jacket?
I didn't even know who that was when I went to Galaxy's Edge for the first time a month ago. Mike had to fill me in on that.
Yeah.
I was like, I
was going to ask who that is.
Like, yeah, see, exactly. And it's like, unless you read like
just rolling with it, but yeah,
the Batu stuff, you're not gonna know who that is.
Yeah, unless you specifically pay attention to like the Disney Parks blogs or that sort of thing, or there is this massive backstory of canon material of books about Batu and about the Black Spire Outpost, and it has this whole backstory and all of these things. There was even I think I discussed in our San Diego Comic-Con show, there was a panel on behind the scenes of Galaxy's Edge and Batu that talked about all these things. And here's the way you really find out is you go to Galaxy's Edge with Mike. Okay, from our sister show, the Jedi Archives. You go with Mike, and as you walk through each and every step of the queue for Rise of the Resistance, is Mike's going to go, oh, this is this from the novel that, and then this happens there at this time, and then the thing. We talked about a little bit too that there's another game coming out that's kind of the virtual reality behind the Galaxy's Edge, that there's other stuff going on at Galaxy's Edge that's been talked about in other media, but you cannot experience in the park. You know, I think it might be kind of a fail, and there's reasons. If that kind of thing had been built into this, if Batu was a world that you could go to in this game, and people that are coming up with downloadable content right now,
they're listening. They're taking notes. But it would be an easy little win, right? It's all about making things easier for yourself. And if you've got a open world style adventure in Star Wars Galaxy, then why not use planets that are kind of hot off the press and producing more merch and having loads of people engage with in real life?
And I think they created new worlds, several new worlds for this game, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
The heroine is from, and the world that when she starts her smuggling mission, the world that you immediately go to are not previously known worlds.
Yeah. And I've just checked, actually, the 4 factions that you encounter and probably do scheming and dealing with back and forth are the Ashiga clan, the Hutt cartel, Crimson Dawn, and the Pike Syndicate. So it's hitting on, they're not necessarily the deepest cuts. I mean, the Pikes turn up a lot. The Hutts, most people know, even if it's just from memes and you're not a Star Wars fan. But Crimson Dawn, and it shows that they're trying to create a story that had a lot more to it than just Star Wars bells and whistles, but there's actual Star Wars content in like the meat of it, in the viscera. And
does anybody know, is this going to be considered canon?
I don't know, but I think it's interesting that it's set in the original trilogy era, and Crimson Dawn is still a thing.
Yeah. I think it would be considered canon just because Disney, I'm assuming until they openly say otherwise, all the content they produce is the current kind of canon. And we think it's being approved by a story group, but we go back and forth and wondering who they really are or what they're actually doing.
Yeah, it doesn't really mean anything anymore, as we could see. Is it canon? Is it not? I don't know.
Yeah. It's just, if you like it, enjoy it. If you don't like it, don't hate on others who do. That whole thing. But I think, it still allows you to have room for that potential massively multiplayer online role-playing game that we've had in Star Wars before with Star Wars Galaxies, which I think kind of feels like a little bit, Dave, what you were describing, where you create your own character and kind of live in Star Wars. But they could bring that back, make a next gen.
There's a lot of things. I'm thinking, like, you could be the Star Wars Sims or something, is where you're really kind of interacting and doing your day-to-day minutia. Or here's another, showing my age, like Second Life, the Galaxy. You know what I'm saying? Is you got your massive server and everybody sets up their house and buys their real estate and whatever, but it's Star Wars.
Yeah. I want Animal Crossing on Endor. That's what I
want. I want an Ewok Tamagotchi.
Yeah. just give us what we want. It's not that hard. It's kind of easy. Listen.
Oh my!
Hey, we could have Predator versus Ewok. It could be a thing if they own those things.
You need to pitch that. Call people you know.
Yeah.
I want to see that right now.
Yes.
Oh, that could be the new Predator movie. That's like the sequel to Prey. Is this time it's not, you know. Oh, the Predator has showed up on Endor. That was his first mistake.
Yeah, it's just going into the official documentation that's available for Star Wars Outlaws online. There's like the StarWars.com page. There's the Ubisoft page for the actual game itself. Right at the top, when you land on it, the one of the big things that jumps out at you is hotfix v1.1.1 was launched 30th of August, and it's basically a patch to improve overall stability and VRAM. That's for the PC version, and it's not that uncommon, but it does kind of put a dampener on landing on the nice graphically loaded Star Wars Outlaws page, and one of the first three things you see is, here's a patch to improve the thing we just sold you for $70.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But okay, we've been really, really negative on Star Wars Outlaws.
Well, no. I don't want to be really, really negative because I want to play this game.
Yeah.
I do want to play this game. I want to see about this game. I think it's very interesting that I like the fact that we're talking about it now before any of us have gotten our hands on it, because it is very, very new. I hope and foresee another episode of the show further down the line when we've had a chance to get our hands on it. And I'll be dead honest, I'm not trying to be negative, but when it goes on sale, I might buy it. But again, it's price point. And you know, when it's a little less buggy and I have a little more time, like if this had released in early mid-June of this year or next year, when I've got a couple of months sitting at home in the heat of the day kind of time, I would be interested to see where this kind of game and this kind of thing goes. And you know, even though it's downloadable content, as you say, Hondo Anaka, and I'm in. Okay, I'm in for Hondo. And I want to say that Hondo, I think it was announced, I think I saw it on Jim Cummings himself's Instagram, is that I'm assuming that means that Jim is the voice. So,
yeah.
thumbs up right there for, you know, getting the OG into the content.
I think some of the kind of gripes and grievances we've mentioned are not just specific to Star Wars Outlaws. They're very much embedded within an entire mega industry that is gaming. So the issue with price point, the issue with launch, I guess, you know, Lucasfilm Games could have had a bit more impact on deciding when to launch it. And it's not the best time right now. And it's also, speaking of timing, in the wake of another massive AAA RPG style, relatively open world, third person action game called Black Myth Wukong, which is a massive AAA budget game based on the Chinese medieval novel Journey to the West, where you play a character from Chinese mythology, essentially like a spirit warrior, and you go through like fables and adventures in a kind of hack and slash way, but basically in gigantic, you know, fully realized 4K ray tracing style environments with the very best hardware off, you know, the PS5 or the gaming PC you're using, and pushing it to the absolute limit. This is a big game, and these games take 4 or 5 years to make, often longer than most Hollywood films.
Absolutely.
So it seems kind of nonsensical that if one developer or publisher knows that another one's launching something around that time, to not be caught in the vapor trail and give a little space. And we frequently talk about how that does become a problem with films.
Yeah.
So maybe that could have impacted here as well, because again, it's a single player story driven game that's third person, that's open world, and that has a lot of deep lore. So it's kind of 5 boxes checked that they both have in common, and they've released within a week of each other. So there's that. But then also like the criticism we have about gaming as a service and having skins and loot boxes and microtransactions, that's a horrible video game disease that's been around for about 8-9 years now. Doesn't seem to be going.
It's everything, and it's from all the, you can't do it without it. I mean, even it's a whole lot easier and cheaper in Pokemon Go if you buy some coins.
Yeah. Pay to have shortcuts. That's basically what it is.
It really kind of is. Well, okay, so that's been around even longer than you really because, like, you go back to the Nintendo Entertainment System. That's where my bread and butter is. How do you get through a game faster? You pay for a subscription to Nintendo Power Magazine. And that's the original pay for shortcuts. It's like, look, there's a giant fold out map of the new map of where all the castles are in the new Legend of Zelda.
Yeah, I didn't hunt down and buy Legend of Zelda limited edition green hardback Hyrule Historia. I didn't do that at all. I'm a sucker for those things.
But I mean,
a nice coffee table style book.
It has been a thing for absolutely ever. I don't know that Nintendo Power wasn't the first place that the Contra code was actually published.
Yeah. But yeah, I actually saw some of those on sale for some recent video games. Some of the big single player games. I think it just came on like the Amazon recommendations, when they're trying to get you to buy extra things to add to your basket and whatnot. The algorithm says, oh, you bought this, you must like these. You might be interested in those. And now you have like the strategy guides for video games, even though no one wants them or really buys them. So they upsell you to like a big, luxurious, hardback, fabric-covered, limited edition looking thing that that also has storyboards and artwork and interviews with the developers. So that's become a kind of a new way that the industry gets money out of you as well. And it must be selling enough because they do a lot of these limited edition ones. So, for example, like the Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Nintendo Switch, which is a truly massively open world game. It has continents upon continents, some above the others in the sky. And there's a strategy guide for it. But when you buy it, rather than it being like 10 or 15, it's 30 or 40. But it's hardback. It looks nice. It's printed on premium paper, and it has a lot of artwork. So there's another reason. And this goes back to what Kat was saying earlier, in that the way media and our consumption of media is shifting in its physical format. Some things are going even more digital, and it feels like we're trying to fight back against it all going digital with our games and our movies and our TV shows. But then on the other hand, the physical media is still kind of coming back. Physical books are now sometimes more affordable than ebooks. Sometimes
vinyl is back.
Yeah, vinyl's been back. Makes me think, did vinyl ever really go away? It just went quiet for a few decades.
There you go. That was it. It went underground.
Yeah, it's indie now. And CDs are back. I mean, there's Star Wars Celebration going to Japan, and for about 8 or 9 years, CDs have been the cool thing that the younger kids listen to their music on and hunt down those Sony Walkmans, and other companies do exist, to enjoy hard physical media in real life rather than just clicking on the Apple Music or Spotify or Google, YouTube Music, whatever app you use.
Yeah.
So I do think it's interesting. We're going to keep having this kind of pendulum swinging back and forth between different media, but I don't think physical media is going to vanish. It just does feel like sometimes you're screaming into the void saying, no, I want my PS6 to have a disk drive.
I'm just saying, man, that when the zombie apocalypse hit, I'm going to be rocking my generator in my basement playing my Atari 2600. Because
Save me a seat.
right.
Save us seats. Could do a LAN party as well.
Exactly.
As long as they don't take out that much power.
Oh, but yeah, so final thoughts, and I'll go with mine, is I think try it. Is I want to try it. I don't know what you guys all will think, but I want to try this game. I want to see it. I hope that the downfalls initially of this get resolved, and that it doesn't keep us from getting more games with the Star Wars IP. I want to see more opportunities to game with Star Wars. What think y'all?
Yeah, I don't think the IP is going to be any problem. I hope they don't stray away from open world games because, this one apparently didn't work as well. But then again, I think that has more to do with the release date and the all the DLC. Well, I guess DLCs and price points and that kind of stuff are kind of common right now. But news that they were already having to issue game ending glitch patches to fix it is already going to deter people. So they might pick up during the holiday season in sales. I mean, the projections weren't good for 6 months, but it might pick up by then if it gets better reviews because it's only been like a week. So hopefully we get, if more reviews come in from users, they might. It has a 4.9 out of 10 average user rating. That might have been because of the glitches for the people who got a hold of the game early and repetition. But again, this is frustrating because it doesn't seem like an open world Star Wars game should be a tough egg to crack. You shouldn't have repetition through all the mechanics of it and the same kind of mission over and over again. It's like it's open world. The appeal is that there's all sorts of stuff you should be able to do. So we'll see when we get the game.
Well, and we'll see how much more open world that it comes. I think a lot of the things are saying, open world, it starts with 4 or 5 worlds or whatever that you can explore. But you do have the potential, since it's not, sadly, a physical media game and there is more downloads, is they could hear outcries and they could, release, we got a mission that's going to Coruscant. Oh, we've got a mission that's going to Endor. We've got a mission is you could pop up these other planets and things as it goes, and potentially even make the game better as it goes along.
Yeah, for sure. I just hope that if it's only a limited handful of 4 or 5 planets, that you're not stuck on Tatooine for a long time.
Your 4 planets are Tatooine, 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 and Hoth, which is frozen Tatooine.
Yeah. I want to be stranded on Felucia. Remember how vivid and vibrant that looked in Revenge of the Sith just before Aayla Secura was shot down?
Yeah.
Give us a story on Felucia. And shout out to The Force Unleashed because they actually did that. So
yes,
go back and enjoy The Force Unleashed if you've not had the joy of playing a Dragon Ball Z style Jedi Sith character with completely
I missed some stuff. Like I bought, I think it was that game on Wii just so I could hook up my lightsaber Wiimote swinging around the living room and break shit.
Yeah, these are experiences we want.
Yeah.
But yeah, in summary, I think Outlaws actually does look incredible. The trailers had been quite interesting. There was a story-based trailer which introduced us to K-Vess and Nyx, and I think she has a droid accomplice as well. But the visually looked great. It did sound immediately like you were thrown into Star Wars. I watched a video that did have some gameplay in it and felt very vibrant and immersive. Music and sound is all exactly what you want from a Star Wars project. And I think, if it can deliver on the idea of having an engrossing third-person adventure as a scoundrel, a new character to the Star Wars galaxy, then it would make good on its promise. So we'll have to play it to truly see, but I think there are a lot of positives. Yeah. And the fact that Lucasfilm Games actually went for this kind of new project in the video game universe does bode well, and you hope they still keep coming up with newer stories and newer characters, and just giving us more chances to explore Star Wars beyond the kind of main characters in the saga that we know and love, but might get bored of.
Yeah, absolutely. Is keep it coming. And if you watching have played the game, let us know your thoughts in the comments. Let us address that in a future show. We always check the mailbox, and both the main virtual cantina and the Unifying Force mailboxes. Let us know, comment on the videos. We'll check all those. We'd love to hear from you and what your thoughts are on this. Those of you who have gotten to play it, and because we want to, and we will eventually. So, it sounds like that. So, but yeah, until next time, thanks for watching. And as always, may the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you.